Let's dive right into today's top stories.
Sounds good to me.
So kicking things off in the U.S., President Trump is set to announce a whole new round of tariffs on imports this Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. The White House is calling it Liberation Day. Though it's unclear exactly what will be affected or by how much, we're hearing possibilities ranging from a 10% tariff across the board to a whopping 60%, specifically on Chinese goods.
60%.
That's what's being thrown around, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just a flat rate either. The administration is also considering what they're calling reciprocal tariffs. Basically, tariffs that could vary by country depending on their existing policies, like their value-added tax, their VAT.
Exactly. Like a consumption tax applied at each stage of production.
Right.
And European officials, well, they're bracing themselves for tariffs as high as 25% on their exports.
25%, wow.
And while the White House hasn't officially confirmed which countries will be hit, Trump has suggested the tariffs could apply to everyone.
Yeah, a shift from earlier hints that some countries, like the UK, might be exempt.
I see.
It's a tangled web, really. There's this dirty 15 list that Treasury Secretary Mnuchin mentioned previously, countries with large trade imbalances and rules that are seen as unfavorable to U.S. firms.
Okay.
And the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, they have a report listing over 20 countries they're particularly interested in. Big trade partners like Canada and the EU are on there, alongside countries like Argentina, Australia, Brazil, China, India, you name it.
A real mixed bag.
It is. And while technically the tariffs will be paid by U.S. firms importing the goods, a lot of those firms are expected to offset the costs by changing suppliers, sharing the burden with partners, or even raising prices for consumers.
Right, and that's where the potential for trouble really comes in. Economists are already concerned about increased recession risks, both in the U.S. and globally.
Exactly. And Trump's argument is that this will push companies to move production back to the U.S. But historically, relocating production isn't that simple.
Absolutely. It's a complex process. And it takes time, it's not a quick fix.
It's not. And on top of all that, you have the interplay with existing tariffs on steel and aluminum, currency fluctuations, and then the potential for other countries to retaliate with their own tariffs.
It all adds up to a very uncertain economic picture.
Now, shifting gears to a very different kind of story. We turn to Myanmar, where a devastating earthquake struck near Sagi and Mandalay last Friday. Last Friday, yeah.
Okay.
A magnitude 7.7, incredibly powerful. The death toll has surpassed 2,700, with over 4,500 injured and hundreds still missing.
Oh, that's terrible.
Sagaing was especially hard hit. 3 mosques collapsed during Ramadan prayers, leading to an estimated 500 Muslim deaths.
Oh, no.
One former imam, So Neu, who's now in Thailand, he believes he's lost around 170 relatives, friends, former members of his congregation.
Wow.
It's truly heartbreaking. Eyewitnesses are saying that Myoma Street in Sagaing was the worst hit area, and those who survived are seeking shelter outdoors, struggling with limited food supplies.
Right.
The situation is incredibly difficult.
It is.
The main Muslim cemetery in Sagaing is actually closed right now because it's too close to the conflict zones.
So what are they doing with the bodies?
The community has been forced to transport them to Mandalay for burial. It's a long journey, and sometimes it means delaying funerals beyond the 24 hours that's traditional in Islam.
Right.
And of course, rescue efforts are being severely hampered by the fighting between the military junta and the resistance groups.
I can imagine.
Mandalay, it was once known as the City of Gold, but right now is facing a grim reality. Bodies are being cremated in stacks because of the sheer number.
Oh, wow.
One resident of Mandalay, we'll call her Jay, she lost her aunt in the earthquake, and her aunt's body wasn't recovered for 2 days.
It's just devastating.
It is. And you have to remember, on top of the earthquake, the fighting, you also have the issue of poor infrastructure.
Absolute.
And it all makes getting aid to those who need it incredibly difficult.
It does.
People are living in fear of aftershocks.
Understandably.
The fire service has reported rescuing over 400 people in Mandalay, and they've recovered 259 bodies. But sadly, everyone believes the true number is much higher.
It's likely to be much higher.
Military Chief Min Aung Hlaing, he's suggesting the final death toll could be over 3,000. And the U.S. Geological Survey initially indicated it could even exceed 10,000.
I see.
It's a truly catastrophic situation, and the children particularly have been deeply traumatized by what they've seen and experienced.
It's hard to even imagine.
The crematoriums are completely overwhelmed. There's a severe shortage of body bags, food, and water.
It's just a nightmare.
And aid efforts are facing all sorts of challenges. There are reports that military authorities in sagging are restricting access to aid workers. Rights groups are urging the junta to grant immediate and unfettered access for aid workers to reach those in need. But the situation is very complex and very, very difficult.
Very difficult.
Meanwhile, we have to turn our attention to another story of immense loss and grief. U.S. prosecutors have announced that they will be seeking the death penalty for Luigi Mangione. Yes, he's the man accused in the December shooting death of Brian Thompson.
Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO.
That's right. Attorney General Pam Bondi described the killing as premeditated, cold-blooded assassination, even going as far as to call it an act of political violence that endangered others.
Wow.
Mangione has pleaded not guilty to state charges of first-degree murder and murder as a crime of terrorism. If convicted on all 11 counts, he'd face a mandatory life sentence without parole. But that's not all.
There's more.
There is. He's also facing separate federal charges.
I see.
Those charges include using a firearm to commit murder and interstate stalking, resulting in death, which make him eligible for capital punishment.
So they're going for the death penalty.
That's right. Prosecutors are planning to pursue both the state and federal cases simultaneously.
I see.
Now, Mangione's lawyer has called the decision to seek the death penalty barbaric and has accused the government of essentially defending the healthcare industry. It's a very charged case. Investigators believe Mangione was motivated by anger towards U.S. health insurance companies in general.
Okay.
The evidence against him includes fingerprint matches found at the crime scene, and it's believed he traveled to New York City using a fake ID in the days leading up to the shooting.
And the shooting took place where?
It happened outside a hotel where United Healthcare was having a meeting. Thompson was shot in the back.
That's awful.
It is. And Mangione was caught a few days later in Pennsylvania. When they apprehended him, he had a ghost gun.
Ghost gun?
Yeah, it's an untraceable firearm. No serial number, often assembled from parts bought online.
Oh, wow.
He also had a fake ID, a passport, and a document that seemed to indicate his motivation for the killing.
I see.
This case has, understandably, sparked a lot of debate about the U.S. healthcare system and about the level of anger and frustration that exists. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, he even made a statement about the extraordinarily alarming rhetoric he's seen on social media. It's a case with a lot of layers and one that we'll definitely be following closely. Now let's move on to Russia, where President Putin has just initiated the country's largest spring military call-up since 2011.
Really?
Yeah. We're talking about 160,000 men, aged 18 to 30, being conscripted for a year of service.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is. And it's part of a larger plan to increase the overall size of the Russian military.
How much larger are they aiming for?
They're aiming to have 2.39 million personnel within the next 3 years, with 1.5 million of those being active servicemen.
I see.
Now, Vice Admiral Vladimir Smolensky, he stated that these conscripts won't be sent to fight in Ukraine.
But
There have been reports in the past about conscripts being involved in the conflict, so it's a situation that's being watched very closely.
right.
The draft takes place between April and July, and it's actually 10,000 higher than the same period last year.
I see.
This is partly because they raised the maximum conscription age from 27 to 30 just last year.
Okay.
So they have a larger pool to draw from. Notifications are going out by mail and through the Gosislugi State Services website. And there have been reports of call-up notices being sent through the city website, Most.ru in Moscow.
Interesting.
What's also interesting is that there's a growing trend of Russians seeking alternative civilian service. Basically, they're trying to avoid the draft.
I see.
Now, on top of the conscription, Russia has also been actively recruiting contract soldiers, as well as soldiers from North Korea. They're trying to address their losses in Ukraine, which at this point are confirmed to be over 100,000 killed.
Those are huge numbers.
They are. And the Russian Defense Ministry has tied this military increase to what they see as growing threats, specifically from the war in Ukraine and from NATO expansion.
Right, because NATO now includes Finland and Sweden.
Exactly.
Right.
Finland, which shares a long border with Russia, has also announced that it's going to withdraw from the Ottawa Convention.
The Ottawa Convention.
Yeah, it's the treaty that bans anti-personnel landmines.
Oh.
Finland is joining a number of other countries that border Russia, like Poland and the Baltic states, in withdrawing from the treaty.
So they're preparing for a potential conflict.
It seems so. They're also planning to increase their defense spending to 3% of their GDP. It's a real sign of the changing security landscape in Europe.
It is.
Now, shifting focus to the Middle East, UNICEF is reporting a truly tragic situation in Gaza. At least 322 children have been killed, and 609 others wounded since Israel renewed its offensive on March 18th.
March 18th.
Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
2 weeks ago now. And these figures, they come from the Hamas-run health ministry, right? The Palestinian Islamic organization that controls Gaza.
Okay.
Now, the UN considers those figures to be reliable, even though Israel disputes them.
I see.
UNICEF states that in the 10 days leading up to March 31st, about 100 children were being killed or maimed every single day.
100 children every day.
That's what they're saying. And many of these children were already displaced, living in makeshift shelters.
That's horrible.
It is. Since the war started over 18 months ago, UNICEF says that around 15,000 children have reportedly been killed, over 34,000 injured, and almost 1 million children have been repeatedly displaced from their homes.
Oh my goodness.
The humanitarian situation in Gaza is already dire, and it's been made even worse by Israel's refusal to allow aid into the territory.
When did that start?
It's been going on since March 2nd. It's the longest blockage of aid that we've seen in this conflict.
Wow.
And UNICEF is warning that this is likely to cause surges in malnutrition, disease, and preventable child deaths.
It's a very worrying situation.
It is. And this situation is made even more complicated by the fact that the UN had to reduce its operations in Gaza after a number of aid workers were killed.
Aid workers.
Yeah. 8 Palestinian medics, 6 civil defense first responders, and a UN staff member were all killed by Israeli forces on March 24th.
Wow.
The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, they've said that they are committed to mitigating civilian harm and that they respect international law. They claim to be making efforts to consider potential civilian casualties in their strikes.
Right.
But the U.S. has said that it expects all parties on the ground in Gaza to comply with international humanitarian law. But they declined to confirm whether or not there'd be an independent assessment into the deaths of those aid workers.
I see.
A State Department spokeswoman, she simply stated that every single thing that happens in Gaza is happening because of Hamas. It's a very complex and fraught situation.
It is.
Now, let's move on to a different part of the world, Iceland, where a volcano has erupted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the southwest of the country, and it's led to the evacuation of tourists and residents from the fishing town of Grindavik and from the Blue Lagoon Spa.
The Blue Lagoon.
Yeah, that very popular geothermal spa.
Yeah.
The eruption has created a fissure, a crack in the earth that's 1.2 kilometers long, and it's been accompanied by multiple earthquakes. Some residents of Grindavik, they actually initially refused to evacuate.
Really?
Yeah. But as the situation developed, they were eventually persuaded to leave. The protective barriers that were set up around Grindavik, they've been breached by a new fissure.
Oh, no.
So now there are real fears that lava flows could actually enter the town.
I see.
And there's also been a hot water pipe that's broken in the town, indicating some pretty significant ground fracturing.
Okay.
Thankfully, the volcanic activity did ease up a bit in the early afternoon, but it's still a very tense situation.
Of course.
One of the residents, Thormar Omarsson, he owns a pizza restaurant in Grindavik, and he actually relocated in 2024 because of the risk of eruptions.
Well, 2024.
Yeah, there was a previous eruption then.
Yeah.
And he described having to leave again as heartbreaking. He said his family's entire community is now gone.
It's really sad.
It is. Most of Grindavik's 4,000 residents were actually already evacuated back in 2023, again, because of the risk of eruptions.
Oh.
And the current magma formation that's feeding this eruption, it stretches for 11 kilometers. It's the longest one they've seen since November 2023.
11 kilometers.
Yeah, and it's extending further northeast. There's also concern about gas pollution. They expect it to travel towards the capital area.
I see.
This eruption comes after a number of earthquakes that were centered in the Sunduk crater range.
Okay.
The Right Chains Peninsula, where all this is happening, it's seen multiple eruptions since 2021, marking a return of volcanic activity after 800 years of quiet.
Wow, 800 years.
It's a significant event, and it's a reminder that Iceland, with its 33 active volcano systems, all situated on the mid-Atlantic ridge, is a very geologically active place.
It is.
Now, turning to Europe, there's been a significant development in France. Jordan Bardella, the leader of the far-right national rally, has called for a rally in Paris this Sunday.
Oh, rally.
Yeah, protest rally.
Yeah.
It's in response to the 5-year ban from public office that was just imposed on Marine Le Pen.
Marine Le Pen.
Yeah.
What was she banned for?
She was found guilty of embezzling 2.9 million euros of EU funds between 2004 and 2016.
Oh, wow.
The Paris Court of Appeal is set to make a decision on her appeal by the summer of 2026.
2026.
Yeah, but that's cutting it close. It's right before the 2027 presidential election.
I see.
Bardella has urged his supporters to engage in democratic, peaceful, calm mobilizations. And the first event is planned to take place near the Eiffel Tower.
Okay.
Le Pen, unsurprisingly, has denounced the ruling, calling it a nuclear bomb and a powerful weapon being used by what she calls the system to prevent her party from winning elections. She's vowed to hold on until the end, until victory.
Wow.
Both Bardella and Le Pen have condemned threats that were made against the judges who were involved in the verdict.
Threats?
Yeah, it's gotten pretty ugly. Le Figaro has reported that the presiding judge has actually been placed under police protection.
I see.
So this ban, it could potentially bring Le Pen's political ambitions to an end. She was aiming for her fourth presidential run. She also received a €100,000 fine and a 4-year prison sentence.
A prison sentence?
Yeah, the 2 years of that were suspended.
Yeah.
But all of that is on hold pending the appeal.
Okay.
Bardella hasn't actually said whether he would be the party's plan B, but a party spokesperson has suggested that he's the most naturally legitimate alternative.
That's interesting.
It is. And polls indicate that a majority of National Rally voters would actually support Bardella over Le Pen in a presidential election.
So this could be a real turning point for the party.
It could. And Le Pen's conviction has been condemned by a number of right-wing leaders across Europe, including Viktor Orban in Hungary and Giorgia Meloni in Italy. Even former U.S. President Donald Trump has weighed in, condemning the conviction.
Wow.
It's a very politically charged situation, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Now, shifting gears to a more personal story, Virginia Giuffre, one of the most prominent accusers of Jeffrey Epstein, is in the hospital in serious condition after a car accident.
A car accident?
Yeah. It happened in Western Australia on March 24th. It involved a school bus.
Oh, no.
Her family has released a statement expressing gratitude for the outpouring of love and support they've received.
Okay.
Ms. Giuffre sustained a number of injuries in the accident, and her condition apparently worsened after the initial collision, leading to her being hospitalized.
I see.
The driver of the school bus reportedly left the scene to return the children on the bus to their homes, and then filed a police report later.
Okay.
Mrs. Giuffre had been living in North Perth, Australia, with her family, and there have been recent reports that she and her husband of 22 years have separated.
Right.
Now, just as a reminder, Mrs. Giuffre is the woman who alleged that she was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to Prince Andrew when she was just 17 years old.
Prince Andrew.
Yeah, the Duke of York. He has denied those claims, but he did reach an out-of-court settlement with Mrs. Giuffre in 2022.
Right.
So this is a woman who's been through a lot, and this accident is just another difficult chapter in her life.
It is.
Now, let's turn our attention to Lebanon, where an Israeli airstrike on Beirut's southern suburbs has killed a Hezbollah official and 3 others.
A Hezbollah official.
Yes. His name was Hassan Bouder. According to Lebanon's health ministry, 7 other people were injured in the strike. This is actually the second strike in the Dahieh area, a Hezbollah stronghold, since the ceasefire was agreed upon back in November.
November.
Yes.
I see.
The Israeli military has stated that they targeted Bouder because he was allegedly assisting Hamas in planning attacks against Israeli civilians.
Okay.
Hezbollah has confirmed the deaths of both Bouder and his son, Ali, who was also a member of the group.
Oh, wow.
Lebanon's President Joseph Aoun has condemned the strike as a dangerous warning, and Prime Minister Nawaf Salam called it a flagrant violation of the ceasefire agreement.
It certainly raises the stakes.
It does. The strike happened at night, without warning. It damaged the top floors of an apartment building.
Oh, no.
The IBF, the ISA, and the Mossad, they've all released a joint statement claiming that Bouder posed an immediate threat. But Lebanon's national news agency has identified 2 of the other victims as Ahmed Mahmoud and his sister Hiam. Their mother was also injured in the strike.
That's just awful.
It is. And Hezbollah MP Ali Amar has warned that the group's patience has limits.
That sounds ominous.
It does. Now, this was actually the second attack that Israel has carried out on Beirut since the ceasefire. The first one happened last Friday, and it targeted a drone storage unit after rockets were fired towards northern Israel.
Rockets.
Yeah.
Was Hezbollah involved?
Hezbollah has denied any involvement in that rocket attack.
Okay.
But despite the ceasefire, Israel has been conducting near-daily airstrikes in Lebanon. They claim they're targeting Hezbollah's efforts to rearm.
Right.
But the Lebanese government sees these strikes and the continued presence of Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon as violations of the truce.
So the situation is still very tense.
It is. And it all stems from the Hamas attack on Israel. that happened back on October 7, 2023. It led to a very intense Israeli air campaign and a ground invasion of southern Lebanon. It resulted in about 4,000 Lebanese deaths and over 1.2 million people being displaced.
Wow.
Israel's stated goal at the time was to ensure the return of displaced residents in northern Israel and to remove Hezbollah from the border areas.
It's a long and complicated conflict.
It is, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be resolved anytime soon.
Unfortunately.
Shifting to Haiti now, where there's been a major incident involving gang violence.
Okay.
A group of gang members stormed the town of Mirabelais in central Haiti on Monday. They managed to release about 500 inmates from the local prison.
500 inmates.
That's right. Police have reported that they've regained control of the town, which is located about 50 kilometers northeast of Port-au-Prince.
Okay.
But local reports suggest that many of the escaped prisoners are still at large.
I see.
And while gangs already control most of the capital, this attack suggests that they're expanding their operations to other areas of the country.
That's worrying.
It is. Mirabelais is a strategically important location. It sits at a junction of some key roads.
Okay.
Locals reported seeing heavily armed men firing at buildings and people, setting fires, and attacking the police station before freeing the prisoners.
It sounds like chaos.
It does. And the attackers are believed to be from the 400 Mawozo and Taliban gangs.
The Taliban?
Yeah, it's the name of a local gang not related to the group in Afghanistan.
Okay.
These gangs are part of a larger coalition called the Viv Ansam, which already controls the northern part of Port-au-Prince. It's thought that they're trying to gain control of routes leading into the countryside.
Makes sense.
It does. And the 400 Mawozo, they're already infamous for their involvement in kidnappings.
Right.
Now, this attack comes just days after a Kenyan police officer who was part of the multinational security support mission was killed in a separate gang attack.
The Multinational Security Support Mission.
Yeah, it's a mission that's trying to help Haiti's police regain control of the country.
Okay.
But progress has been very slow. Last year, over 5,600 people were killed in Haiti due to gang violence, and the situation has continued to deteriorate in 2024, with even more deaths and kidnappings.
It's a very dire situation.
It is, and it seems like it's only getting worse.
Unfortunately.
Now let's turn our attention back to the United States, where the Trump administration has deported 17 more alleged gang members to El Salvador.
Okay.
This includes members of Tren de Aragua and MS-13.
Tren de Aragua.
Yeah, that's a Venezuelan gang that's been gaining a lot of power and influence in recent years.
Okay.
Salvadoran officials have confirmed that the group of deportees includes both Venezuelans and Salvadorans.
Right.
And this deportation comes despite a court order that was issued earlier this month.
A court order.
Yeah, the court order was meant to halt deportations that were being carried out under the Alien Enemies Act.
The Alien Enemies Act.
Yeah, it's a law that dates back to 1798 and allows for the detention and deportation of non-citizens who are deemed to be a threat to national security.
Wow.
But the administration is saying that these deportations were carried out under general immigration laws, not the Alien Enemies Act.
I see.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio has described the deported individuals as murderers and rapists.
Wow.
And President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador, he shared a video of the deportees arriving and stated that they were confirmed murderers and high-profile offenders, including 6 child rapists. He said it was all part of the fight against terrorism and organized crime.
Okay.
President Trump then reposted Bukele's message, criticizing the Biden administration for allowing these individuals into the U.S. in the first place. He thanked Bukele for providing them with what he called a wonderful place to live. El Salvador has agreed to accept these deportees in exchange for $6 million.
$6 million.
That's right.
So it's a deal of sorts.
It seems so. Now, the ACLU and other groups have challenged the legality of these deportations.
What are they arguing?
They're saying that deportations under the Alien Enemies Act violate due process rights. They say that the individuals being deported are not being given a fair chance to defend themselves.
Okay.
A temporary restraining order was previously imposed on the use of the Alien Enemies Act, but deportations have continued nonetheless. A further court hearing is scheduled for Thursday.
So it's an ongoing legal battle.
It is, and it's a situation that's being watched closely by both sides of the debate.
Absolutely.
Now, another story that highlights the tension between free speech and national security. Momodou Tal, a graduate student at Cornell University, has left the United States rather than face deportation.
Deportation.
Yeah, his student visa was revoked.
Why?
It was revoked because of his involvement in pro-Palestinian protest activities.
I see.
Tal, who is both a UK and Gambian citizen, had sued to try to block his deportation, but he ultimately decided to leave voluntarily. He said he wanted to go free, and with my head held high
Yeah.
after a judge denied his request to delay his removal. The Trump administration is reportedly cracking down on international students who are involved in anti-Israel protests.
Cracking down.
Yeah. They're calling these cases self-deportations. Basically, they're making it so difficult for these students to stay in the country that they're choosing to leave rather than fight the legal battles.
I see.
Tal said he lost faith in the possibility of receiving a favorable court ruling that would guarantee his safety and his ability to express his beliefs. He had already been suspended twice by Cornell for his protest activities.
What kind of activities are we talking about?
One example is a post he made on the day of the Hamas attack against Israel. It read, "Glory to the resistance."
Okay.
He also later expressed solidarity with armed resistance in Palestine from the river to the sea.
Right.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated last week that at least 300 university students have had their visas revoked because of their involvement in pro-Palestinian protests.
300.
That's right. And Trump administration officials are citing the Immigration and Nationality Act to justify this.
The Immigration and Nationality Act.
Yeah. It allows for the deportation of non-citizens who are deemed to be adversarial to the foreign policy and national security interest of the United States.
Okay.
But critics are condemning these deportations as a violation of free speech rights.
Right. Because protesting is a protected right.
Exactly.
Right.
And another student who was forced to leave the U.S., Rajani Srinivasan, she's denied being a terrorist sympathizer. She's hoping to clear her name and return to her PhD program at Columbia University.
It's a very difficult situation for these students.
It is.
Yes.
And it raises a lot of questions about the balance between national security and the right to free speech, particularly in the context of this very sensitive and complex conflict. Now, our final stop today is Ukraine, where despite the ongoing Russian invasion, rumors of potential elections are swirling around the capital, Kyiv.
Elections?
Yeah, a presidential election was actually due in 2024, but it was suspended when martial law was declared. Now, the Kremlin has repeatedly called for new elections as a condition for a ceasefire, and President Trump has echoed that sentiment.
I see.
Some sources are suggesting that President Zelensky might be reconsidering holding elections later this year.
Later this year?
As ceasefire talks continue.
Okay.
Now, Valer Zelensky, who is seen as a potential rival to Zelensky, he's denied any intention of running for office. He said the focus right now should be on saving the country, not on politics.
Right.
And the head of Ukraine's Central Election Commission, he's pointed out that legal changes would be needed to hold elections while martial law is still in effect.
That makes sense.
It does. The Economist, they ran a report saying that Zelensky had discussed the possibility of holding elections after a U.S. brokered ceasefire, potentially even by Easter.
Easter?
Yeah, but government sources have denied that report.
Okay.
So there's a lot of conflicting